Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo III Necromancer build video. A patch went out on Tuesday that helped rebalance some of the sets, some of the interactions with the Necromancer. We were seeing a huge disparity in power between the sets. Things have been tweaked now. The pet set was by far the most powerful. Things are getting a little closer to internal balance between the sets now. There was a certain perma-invulnerability pet set build, basically perma-invulnerability build, that was dominating the Necromancer leaderboards for a while. Thankfully, that's no longer currently there. There's some things that were changed. Right now, we still do have a pet set that does seem to be the most powerful. Maybe we haven't quite found the interactions for others yet. There's the Bone Storm set that maybe might be able to compete. But for now, what I want to present is the sort of quote-unquote nerfed pet set, or the reworked pet set. It's still strong. It's still possibly the strongest. What I'm doing right here is clearing a Greater Rift 75. This is my first attempt at a 75 with this build. I clear it pretty easily. I don't die once. I have about 3 minutes left in the end, but I'm sure it could push higher. We've seen variants of this build on the leaderboards, and it's not clear exactly which are the best combinations. Again, things are just emerging, but it just goes to say that there's a lot more improvement to be made on this build. It can definitely clear well into the 80s, possibly even the 90s, you know, with enough perfected gear and Greater Rift fishing and Paragon levels and what have you. But we'll have to see just how far it could actually go. For those who haven't been keeping up, basically the previous version of the pet build had you summoning the Contagion or Contamination Skeletal Mages, the poison ones, the poison area of effect ones, and it was super powerful, and you would combine this with some cooldown powers to have alternating uptime on your Rothma's Shield passive through either Land of the Dead and Army of the Dead. There's a passive that gives you 4 seconds of invulnerability right after you pop either of those two powers, and you'd be able to pop them basically all the time. This combined with the super strong Contamination rune. Again, things have been retooled now, and we're going to take a look at the current sort of versions that have emerged now. So we're still using the Rothma set, but we're actually not even working Army of the Dead into this version of the build. So we're ignoring that 2-piece set bonus entirely. The 4-piece bonus, you gain damage reduction when your pets are hitting. And the 6-piece set gives you more damage for every skeletal mage that you have out. Now we're going to combine this with the revised Jethith set. Jessith's set, which used to be the Jero set, I believe. Its new power: when the target of your command skeleton dies, your skeletons are automatically commanded to attack a nearby target. And while your skeletons are commanded to attack a target, all of your minions deal 400% increased damage. This is a wonderful rework. It makes it a lot more powerful, and now it synergizes well with this build. The other item worthy of note is that we're using Dainty's Binding. This is a belt that gives you damage reduction as long as one enemy is affected by Decrepify. So this build has a decent amount of toughness for the Necromancer. We've had some survivability issues with the Necromancer, but I gotta say, things are looking a little bit better now. I don't know if we're quite where we want to be, but again, with this build, at least, you know, in the 70s, I haven't had any survivability issues. There are other builds for other classes, other top builds that are far more glass cannon, even in the 70s, that you're going to struggle to live. In our cube, we're still using the Scythe of the Cycle. Again, that's just one variation. Another variation uses the Shadow Hook, which gives you more damage per essence, but basically, your secondary skills, which is going to be our Skeletal Mage, deal quadruple damage while Bone Armor is active. And we're also using, for our jewelry slot, the Circle of Neluge, which is now the Circle of Neluge's Evol, which is Julian Love backwards, Diablo III Technical Art Director. This lets you raise 2 mages at the same time, and they last an additional 4 seconds. That really helps us max out at our 10 skeletal mages. For our skills, we have a generator sort of just in case. I didn't typically need to use it, but we're using Sudden Impact for that stun. This will combine really well with, say, Ancient Parthen Defenders. The Necromancer doesn't have a lot of good options for wrist slot items. Right now I'm using Nemesis Bracers just because this build kind of specializes in killing elite packs. But if you want more toughness, go for Ancient Parthens. Then we've got Skeletal Mage, Skeleton Archer. For every mage we have out, we gain more attack speed, stacking up to 30%. This does not make your pets attack faster, but attack speed buffs to yourself just turn out to be straight up damage buffs to your pets. That's why Tasker and Theo is one of the few items that directly buffs pet attack speed, because it specifically states that it buffs pet attack speed. Now, because we're not going with a poison rune anymore, that means we're not dealing that big AoE damage anymore. That's why we're more focused on single target DPS. Next, we have Devour Cannibalize. You can go with Devouring Aura, but I found that you can just numlock trick Devour Cannibalize, and it's effectively like having Devouring Aura, except you also gain the rune benefit of Cannibalize, health restoration. If you don't know what the numlock trick is, we'll have a full guide on this build if it does become viable. We're not going to get too in-depth right now, but in the future when Necromancer is closer to release, when we're not going to expect big changes to be made anymore, I'll make some full build guides. Bone Armor, we want Bone Armor for two reasons. One, for the toughness, it's just a great toughness power, but two, because of that item that will buff our Skeletal Mage damage. We're taking this rune mostly just for the stuns. Again, it would be really good if you had Ancient Parthens to combine with that. Next, we go with Decrepify. That's a must-have for the toughness, for Dainty's Binding. The rune, you know, we're going with Dizzying Curse here. It doesn't super matter, but again, more stuns, more ability to trigger your Ancient Parthens. And, you know, it's just helpful to have stunned enemies. Then lastly, we have Command Skeletons. Freezing Grasp, this is a cold build. I've seen some physical variants, but Freezing Grasp, again, really good. It's going to freeze enemies, more crowd control. We're picking so many different crowd control skills here that it really helps with our survivability. For our passive, Spreading Malediction, this gives you 1% damage bonus for each enemy afflicted by one of your curses, so that really encourages you to be spamming your Decrepify, ensuring that everything on screen is cursed. I didn't do a very good job about that, I think, in this run, but I mean, you can very quickly get up to a 20% damage buff there. Next, we got Extended Servitude, more time on your Skeletal Mages. That means you don't have to resummon them as often. Final Service is our Free Life passive, and then Overwhelming Essence. You know, there's not a lot of really great powers for the Necromancer, passives that is, so having more Essence, it's just helpful to be able to spam out all your mages at once. And that about covers the basics of the build. Now again, I tested this build around Greater Rift level 75, that's generally the level around which I test builds or make build guides, because I think it's a pretty fair level for the average Diablo 3 player. And again, we're talking with unoptimized gear, no Calison's augments, Paragon and gems that aren't particularly high. And I see, if it's a struggle, then maybe this isn't such a good build. If I can go through that 75 pretty easily, then yeah, this seems to be a pretty good build with a lot of room for expansion. Again, once you start adding in those Calisons, the perfected gear, all the right stats that you want, the Ancients, the Paragon levels, that's when you really start going ahead, and Greater Rift fishing on top of that. So I think the pet build is in a pretty good place right now. As we iterate throughout beta and as changes are going to be made, I'll eventually make a build guide fully explaining what stats you want and all the right skills and gear and all that. But for now, we're going to end this guide here, and the rest of this video is just going to be showing off the rest of the Greater Rift. As the Rift footage is playing, I just want to take a minute to thank App Bounty for sponsoring this video. App Bounty is a mobile app that gives you points for downloading and playing apps, other apps. And you can redeem those points on gift cards for things like Steam, Amazon, Netflix, iTunes, PlayStation, and Xbox. And these should work across a wide range of countries worldwide. If you want to check out App Bounty, you can download the application at appbounty.net. Once you run the app, you will either be prompted for an invite code, or you can enter an invite code by going to the Account tab. And if you enter the code Rhykker with a capital R, you'll get some free points to get you started. You can also just follow the referral link in the description below. Then you gain points just by downloading apps, though you gain a lot more points if you actually run the app. And you're free to delete the apps afterwards. Now, I'm always skeptical of these types of make money for free kinds of things, but App Bounty has a solid 4.1 rating on the App Store and has been around for years. You can read a lot of success stories in the reviews of people that got a couple gift cards. You know, just don't expect to quit your job and live off App Bounty. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.